Hello everyone, this is Gail Ecker from Equine Guelph, and I would like to welcome Linda Hauk, horse professional and business entrepreneur, to our learning community. So glad to have you with us, Linda.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate being able to share some ideas with you.
Excellent. So we know right now these are difficult times for so many, but what we'd like to do today is focus on some of the issues that riding school operators are having right now. And things that they can do to get through this storm and then make themselves, stronger coming out of this. So right now we're looking at the possibility of opening up the schools, and school owners are busy trying to get their facility ready for lessons again. Many of these horses have been off for over 2 months, and we know there's a loss of conditioning during that time. So as someone who's conditioned a lot of horses in your day, what are some of the major points to bring horses back safely?
Yeah, the school horse situation in and of itself is quite unique, as opposed to a rider that has their own personal horse and can have a little bit longer time to bring that animal back. The first things all the barns are going to have to consider, with having had 2 months off for the most part. Yes, I'm sure most of these horses have been turned out, but there's a definite lack of cardio capacity and muscle. So I'm thinking tack fit might be a bit of a problem for some of these riding schools right now, with how horses have changed their shape. So that's one thing they're going to have to try and mitigate as best as they can, is to make sure that moving forward, the tack fits all these guys. The school horses, these riding schools, they want to get back up into business as soon as they can. And I'm hoping they're able to give most of these horses for lessons that, require some cantering, and maybe they can put off the jumping for at least 3 weeks. Give these guys a chance to get some kind of base back into them, easier type lessons. Everyone's going to want to be in a rush to get back to either a show or, some kind of competition, or even get back into lessons. And that really isn't what's in the best interest for the horses right now, right from the get-go. So it's a matter of just quietly and slowly bringing them back into some kind of a riding program, Gail. As many days a week as they can, just doing long, slow work, lots of, walking, hacking, ideally. I have a certain program, for the base 3 weeks, but what makes it difficult is the riding schools need to make money, and they need their school horses to get back into work quicker.
So we have to somehow balance getting the horses back in without overworking them and getting lameness issues or saddle fit issues.
Yeah, there's a great racetrack saying, and I love it, and I've used it as whenever I get the chance to say it: if you don't wait for a horse, they'll make you wait. And it's just a great expression, because they will give you signs that you're doing too much too soon. Lugging in, lugging out, sourness, injuries are starting to show the potential for injury. And those are the signs that you really do need to take seriously and say, okay, I need to back off on this horse. Maybe you're good for just walk trot lessons for another week before we can actually start doing some more cantering. I do think students and their parents will hopefully come back into the situation and realize that you need time. We're not going to be able to do the coursework or all the cantering work that we were doing before this all happened. But you know what? Now we get the opportunity to spend more time out in the fields, let's say. Maybe there's kids that haven't been able to hack. Bit of a double-edged sword. I know we've got horses that haven't done anything for 2 months. Some of them are going to be feeling really good. What do we do with those kinds as well? I have read, a lot of people are back into lunging and things like that. And lunging is definitely another way of getting some work into a horse, letting them get their excitability out. But after 2 weeks of being off, sticking a horse on a lunge line is not the best thing for joints and muscles and tendons and ligaments with torque. So then you've got to be careful. Bigger circles that you can manage if you're going to have to lunge them, boots on them in front for protection, just things like that. Slow and steady wins the race.
Because we do know lunging can cause its own set of problems. particularly if the horses are bucking and kicking in a small circle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they've been on, hopefully all these guys have been out as long as possible. Turnout is the best thing for any horse in any discipline. And for the most part, they've probably been on just, level ground, horses. Yeah, they run around a little bit out there, but they don't tend to want to exercise themselves. So now you're bringing them back under tack. They haven't been weight bearing. Riders themselves aren't fit. They've had 2 months off. So you just have to be very cognizant to, okay, what is in the horse's best interest? Walking out in the fields, big rings, those kinds of things. Anything that is condensed and tiny is certainly harder on a horse's body in the short term.
Your point about the riders being unfit is a good one. So this would be a time for a lot of instructors to just take them right back to basics and work on balance and core strength.
Yeah, and some of these barns that have multiple horses, now's a chance for maybe some of these more experienced riders to help get those horses back up to a condition where, now that horse can start doing more lessons a week, or now, it can get into a cantering kind of lesson as well. But minimum 2 weeks before really any of these school horses should be back into a program if you're using more canter work and things.
Right. Yeah, because we all know that too far, too soon, too fast is going to set back that riding stable when they start losing horses to lameness.
Absolutely, Gail. Absolutely.
Right. In terms of looking for issues, a lot of these horses have had long feet because it's been tough to bring the farriers in. So when those horses, hopefully the horses are trimmed before the riding starts. But how long does a horse need to adjust to the different set, whether it's shoeing or just trimming, because that's changing the angles?
Well, I would hope. We've been out for 2 months. So hopefully, I do think a lot of these blacksmiths have been very cognizant. I know one of my best friends is a blacksmith, and she's still traveling to all her barns. They're considered an essential service, as far as I was told. So most horses, I hope, are fairly up to date on their shoeing and their trimming. I'm sure if they're long in the toe now, they'd be tripping. That would be definitely something to be looking out for, tripping, stumbling, signs that they're due. So I'm hoping, within a shoeing, they'd be good to go. I hope none of these school horses have been neglected in that regard, because the blacksmiths are considered an essential service.
And I know for some, trying to save on money went along. I mean, that's been a big thing, is trying to save on feed, save on vet bills, save on farrier. Everybody's had to deal with that.
You know what, Gail? You're spot on. But again, no foot, no horse.
Yes, right. And again, a high risk if we're trying to work on.
Pick your poison. Which one are you going to try and save the money on? No, you're quite right, because a horse that has, too long feet, long overdue, now you've thrown all the angles off. So now you're risking, tendon and soft tissue injuries and things like that. So no, you're absolutely right. The school horse situation, yeah, the owners need to very much be, okay, where can I save some money and where is it not such a good idea? For example, hopefully moving forward, Gail, the whole worming situation, I think it's now coming out that you'll actually save money if you do fecals on horses.
Yes.
So that's somewhere that I think a lot of these barn owners, school horse owners, they can look at that system now and try to save money. We're not having to worm horses as often as we used to think we did. But shoeing's pretty paramount, honestly. That great saying, no foot, no horse.
If people are getting them back to riding, what would you be looking for if there's issues with saddle fit? What would you recommend to somebody to keep an eye on that?
One of the big things is horses have done one of two things. One, they've lost muscle, and two, they've put on probably a bit of a hay belly, grass belly. I would think, unless there was a feeding issue, most horses have been able to put some weight on. Regardless, always check the pommel of the saddle. Make sure there's absolutely no contact with the wither on the horse. that's a major no-no, right? You're pressing right on a horse's spine, and that'll give them a lot of grief. There's another great, analogy is if you have a saddle that doesn't fit, more pads doesn't necessarily make it better. It's like putting your foot in a shoe that doesn't fit well. You don't put on more socks. It doesn't fix the problem, right? You might need, a half pad or something to help maybe with something at this point. You might have to go up a girth size because they have put on some weight. Instead of forcing that girth on, they might need a larger one for now. Again, the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're just trying to put a base back on all these guys and just be very attention to detail.
Certainly your business depends on them, so they're worth the effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, now Equestrian Canada has just released a document called Return to Competition Guidelines. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. It's just recently come out, but I think there's some great information there to help people. Even though that's a competition horse, there's still some really good thoughts in there to take a look at before you start your school horses back.
No, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I'm sure most, if you're a pretty organized school barn, you have some kind of calendar or log system that you know exactly what each horse has done each day. And from day one, when I started my riding career, almost 40 years ago, a calendar is huge. And anyone that I've ever coached, that's one of the first things I always tell them: get a calendar so that you can at least see a month in advance. And with the school horses, same thing with a competition horse, you pick a date down the road, say 4 to 6 weeks out, and then you work backwards from that date, filling in your calendar. So, for example, say the school horses need to be, jumping by week 3. Well, then you work backwards from week 3, and how am I going to build that base as best I can, because that's quick. 3 weeks is quick. Typically, it's minimum 4 up to 6 weeks just to put a decent base on a horse. And then you know exactly what each horse has done through the weeks. And so then I'm always fairly confident after 6 weeks, if a horse has a good base in, they've started some interval training. And for me, Gail, that long, slow, distant work, which includes interval training, it's not just for eventers. One of my favorite sayings is a fitter horse is a braver horse. When a horse isn't fit, they're coming down to a jump. I don't care if it's a hunter jump, show jump, cross-country fence. If they're a little on the tired side, they're not as brave as they would be. My show jump students have always done interval training. Yes, they don't need to necessarily do the times that we would if you're a higher level eventer. Back in the day when I went advanced with steeplechase, we would do 3 8-minute canter sets once a week. My gosh, we don't want to do that to the hunter, but they could easily do 3 1-minute canter sets. And that's something that they could certainly talk to their coach about. And as well, it gets the rider into that using their core as well. So it benefits the horse respiratory, likewise also helps the rider with their own conditioning.
And horses that may have a pain issue, you'd be seeing that same lack of interest in going over the jump, the hesitation. So it's not just a fitness thing. It could in fact be a horse anticipating pain.
You know what? That's a great thing. Great point, Gail. Horses that have feet issues, you'll see sometimes they start quitting. It's not because of the fence, because they're worried about how it feels on landing.
Right.
And I've seen that many times over my career. A horse that's brewing a pus pocket, a horse that needs shoes up front, but is barefoot up front. You ask them to come down a drop or something, and they're very hesitant, but they're sound. Put a set of shoes on that horse, and it's amazing how quickly they can, I feel so much better on landing. So very often, that's an excellent point. It's not the takeoff that worries them. In a sore horse or a horse that might need shoes, it's the landing.
And muscle issues. If the saddle fit is going to, they're pounding when they land, they have issues through the shoulders or the neck.
Absolutely. And that's why any discipline, ideally, I've always thought this, should be out in the fields, walking, trotting, up and down the hills, right? Best way to condition a horse, use the hills.
So Linda, that was some really good information. Hopefully that will help several of the people in our learning community to think about other ways. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Your help is much appreciated.